Hi, I'm Ken Rolla. I'm a natural health educator and live food chef. We're going to be here today to show you how to make raw food dishes and to teach you a little bit about the lifestyle. Okay, now first of all, why would anybody want to eat a raw or live vegetarian diet? And there's a lot of hype and a lot of media attention to this, and usually it's portrayed as something that's a new fad and that only strange people are doing it. But the reality of it is this diet has been around for thousands of years. Hippocrates espoused it. Pythagoras, a lot of the Greek philosophers espoused it. It goes back as far as the Essenes thousands of years ago, and it's been in the United States since the inception of colonists coming here. So it's been around for quite a long time, and the concept is basically the reason that you want to do it is that only raw plant material, when you ingest it, will alkalize and rejuvenate tissue. And so if you're eating a vegetarian diet even, if you're eating cooked vegetarian food, mostly cooked, it's a degenerative diet because the food, when food is cooked, it becomes acidifying to the body. And when the body operates ideally at a slightly alkaline pH overall, and so if you're eating an acidifying diet, it's degenerating tissue and the systems of the body are not working optimally. So when you're eating raw plant material, predominantly raw plant material, the body is alkaline and the systems of the body tend to work optimally and tissue will regenerate. And so you tend to feel better, have more energy, age slower, and that type of thing. So that's one of the reasons why, that's the main reason why that people are switching to this diet. But also, obviously we're living in an increasingly polluted world, and our food is becoming genetically engineered and laden with pesticides and herbicides and all sorts of poisons and toxins. And so eating a live plant diet will help clean out some of that stuff along with detoxing the body and doing other things. But it's not a fad. It's been around a long time, and there's important things to understand when doing this lifestyle. There are a lot of raw food, live food teachers out there teaching that as long as food is raw vegetarian that it's healthy, and that's not necessarily so. There are a lot of food combinations that are not healthy for the body, and in particular one that I see people do a lot is the combination of proteins and sweet fruits. For instance, nuts and fruit. It's very common for people to want to eat fruit with nuts, maybe almonds or walnuts or something like that. And a lot of raw food recipes will combine fruits and nuts or sweeteners and nuts, sugars and nuts. It's a very unhealthy combination because most Americans, with the lifestyle and the diet that we typically have these days, we tend to have already have problems from too much sugar consumption as it is, particularly refined sugars. And so very often it's not uncommon for Americans to have Candida albicans, which is an overgrowth of Candida yeast in the GI tract, and that leads to all sorts of health problems and imbalances. And so consuming more sugar fuels that yeast, and it continues to grow and mutate in the body. It also, there are fungal forms and funguses in the body that consumption of sugars will feed. And so in general, sugar consumption and acidity in the body are two main contributors to disease and degeneration. So it's important to understand that you need to combine foods properly. And included with this DVD is a food combining chart that you can look at to see what types of foods combine well and which ones don't. Typically, if you're combining foods that don't combine well, what happens is that if you're eating something that digests very quickly, like fruit, fruit only takes 20 or 30 minutes to be digested, whereas nuts or seeds or heavier foods may take hours. And so if you combine the two, the fruit wants to digest quickly, but the nuts will slow it down. And so what winds up happening is the fruit ferments in the gut, and so you wind up throwing the body out of imbalance and creating toxins and feeding parasites and all kinds of stuff. And so it's important to get a food combining chart and understand food combining. There are different people out there with different philosophies about food combining. I recommend check them out and see which ones have common threads, so that you can have an idea of food combinations, because that's one thing that I see very, very commonly with people that switch to a raw food diet is they eat really bad combinations of foods, and then they fuel disease and they wonder why they're not healthy. So food combining, very important. Okay, now I'd like to talk a little bit about the importance of eating organic produce. From what I see, most Americans are not aware of how incredibly toxic and manipulated our food supply has become, even meat and vegetables. The produce that you buy in a conventional grocery store very often has been irradiated, and of course it's had pesticides and herbicides used on it, sometimes fungicides, all sorts of things. And it is not what the food was that our grandparents ate 100 years ago. This food, in addition to having all the pesticides and herbicides on it, it's also grown in soils that have been chemically farmed over the last 75 to 100 years typically, and the soils have become depleted of nutrients. Plants take out 75 to 100 nutrients from the soil, and we basically put three things back in: potassium, nitrogen, and phosphorus. And so over time, plants pull out all the nutrients from the soil and we don't replenish it. Farmers do replace some trace minerals and things, but basically if you look at conventional farming, you've got soil that is dead from an imbalance in pH from putting all these chemicals on it, and there's no life in that soil, and you need soil that's alive with bacteria and organisms to break it down and to create nutrients that plants can absorb. So it's very important to eat organic produce. If you look at the science behind analysis of organic produce, it shows many times more levels of nutrients than in commercially grown produce. And you may not be able to tell from the taste of the produce, but it's always important to buy organic as much as possible. One of the factors in organic produce that people often bring up is that it's much higher price than conventional produce, but if you look at it from the standpoint of that being your health insurance policy, the price is not high because ultimately it's what you pay down the road that matters, not what you're paying right now in the moment of buying a piece of fruit. So it's very important to use organic fruits and vegetables as much as possible. I'd also like to talk a little bit about oils. When you're using oils in live food, you can actually get raw, cold processed oils, and that's what you want to use. You want to get whether it's a nut seed oil or an oil like olive oil, you want to make sure that it's first cold pressed, organic. It's important for it to be first cold pressed because that means that they're pressing the material and extracting the oil and using that oil without using solvents and chemicals to extract more oil out of it. So it's important that it's first cold pressed. It's important that it's organic, and if it's cold pressed, normally when if you buy conventional oils, in the pressing process, they're heated to very high degrees so that they can extract the most amount of oil out of the material. And so with cold pressing, it doesn't do that. When you heat the oils, you're killing beneficial enzymes and nutrients in the oil. So it's very important to eat a truly cold processed raw oil. Now, the three things that make food taste good basically are oil, salt, and sugar. And so regarding salt, it's important to understand that there are lots of different kinds of salts, and refined salt in particular is very toxic to the body. So in using salt in raw food dishes, you want to make sure to use an unheated, unrefined salt. Salt companies actually make most of their money selling the minerals from the salts that they mine. They actually extract the minerals and sell the minerals to vitamin companies who turn around and sell it to you, typically in a format the body can't use. And then they turn around and sell you extremely pure sodium chloride with chemicals to keep it from caking and that type of stuff. And so regular table salt that you buy in conventional grocery stores is very toxic to the body, and that's why you typically see things like high blood pressure and other problems from the overconsumption of salt. Whole unrefined salt, on the other hand, is sea salts or other salts that are mined that have not been heated, they've not been refined, they're basically crushed and ground with the minerals intact, and they are good for the body. They can balance electrolytes in the body and do all sorts of things as long as they're not overconsumed, and as long as you're getting plenty of enzymes and other nutrients in the body to help metabolize them. You actually can get plenty of sodium and salts in the foods that you eat without adding salt, but typically for most people switching to a live food diet, they want flavors reminiscent of the cooked foods that they ate, and so using salt or certain foods with salt in them will help to add flavor to it. So it's important to use unrefined, unheated salt. Celtic salt, Himalayan crystal salt, there are other salts. Redmond real salt is a good inexpensive salt. Okay, now we're going to talk about equipment, and the first piece of equipment that you find very typically with a raw food lifestyle is a blender. Different people use different pieces of equipment more heavily than others. The blender is not one that I use the most, but it is an invaluable piece of equipment. And when you're really doing this as a lifestyle, you need a blender that's going to hold up well and that can blend heavy-duty items. So you need a good blender. Buying a department store blender, you'll burn the motor out and it won't do a very good job for what you need to do with raw food recipes. There are a few good commercial-grade blenders out on the market, and I've got a few of them here. This is not all that you can find out there. There's a company called BlendTech that makes a good line of blenders, and then these are Vitamix blenders, and this is a L'Equip RPM 228. And these and the BlendTechs are typically what you see raw foodists purchase. They are expensive. The RPM blender actually is very affordable, and for people who are not willing to commit to the higher price of these commercial blenders, I think this is a really good blender. This blender costs about $130, and it's pretty powerful. It has an on-off switch and a speed control, which is very nice, because if you have like some blenders where you just have a high and a low setting, when you turn them on, it'll throw stuff up into the lid, particularly if you don't have much liquid in the blender and you flip it on at even a low speed. A lot of times it'll throw it up into the lid. So it's nice. It's a really nice feature to have a variable speed button on it, so you can turn it on. All of these blenders are very noisy. You can turn this on. You can see it's quite noisy. And unfortunately, that's just the nature of the beast with blenders. This is a Vitamix 4500. This is what a lot of raw food people sell and recommend. And I own one of these, and I don't particularly like it because of what I said. It's just got a high and a low speed and an on and off button. And so when you turn it on, if you've only got a small amount of liquid in it, it will throw the liquid up into the lid and then stick to the sides, and so you lose some of the liquid. Plus, this lid actually has openings in it so that some of the liquid can actually be blown out of the top of the lid. It's actually, I think, a poor design. But this blender runs about $350 to $400. It's not cheap. But it comes with a 7 or 8 year warranty, and it will hold up very well. It's a commercial grade blender. The one that I recommend is this one. This is the Vitamix 5000, and you can only get this directly from Vitamix. You can get this occasionally at buying clubs like Sam's Club, and this one has a variable speed dial on it, and it typically runs about $450 to $500. It's very expensive. They add an extra $100 just to have the variable speed, it seems like. But it does work well because you can start it at a low speed and work your way up. See, so you can start it up slowly, bring it up to speed, and then when you turn it off, you can also bring it down to speed before you switch it off, so that particularly when you're turning it on and you've got a small amount of liquid in there, it doesn't throw it up into the lid and you waste whatever it is you're making sticking to the side of the blender and maybe even coming out of the top of the blender. So I like this one the best, I think, of all of the blenders that I've used. But the BlendTech has some advantages, and you can check them out online and take a look at those. But I would get a good blender. I would get at the bottom line, I would get one of these L'Equip RPM blenders. These are great to start out with. If you get a cheap department store blender, you're going to burn it out real fast with all of the things that you do making raw food recipes. So I would get a good blender, and in general, I would invest in good equipment for what you're doing. And I'll let you know about which pieces of equipment you can save money on. But that's it for blenders. Okay, food processors are also an invaluable piece of equipment in a raw food kitchen, and this is one area where you can save some money. This is a higher-end home model food processor that I use for workshops. It's 14 cups, it's very large, it's really nice, but you don't need anything this fancy typically at home. You can get away just fine spending $40 or $50 on an inexpensive department store food processor. Features that you do want to look for is a pulse button, where you can pulse it on and off, because a lot of times when you're chopping things like onions, you want to be able to pulse it and throw the stuff around rather than just grinding it up in one place. And so a pulse button is really a necessity, and of course on-off button. And then also one thing you want to look for is a large opening. This one has quite a large opening for throwing in things while it's running. And you want to make sure that the model that you get will allow you to open that large opening up while the machine is running and throw things in there to be chopped. And this one also has a smaller opening for things like carrots and celery and stuff like that, so that you can feed them in there for chopping. Or also, if you're using one of these attachments, which I also recommend getting, a grater and a slicer. These are two very useful additions to a food processor. So those are the things you look for in a food processor. Now, juicers are, in my mind, the most important piece of equipment in a raw food kitchen, because not only will you use juices for recipes, but you'll also ideally be drinking juices on a daily basis, or at least a regular basis. And so this is the piece of equipment that I use the most in my kitchen. Now, most people, when they think of juicers, think of the department store juicers that you find typically. These are referred to as centrifugal juicers, something like this, the Juice Man, Jack LaLanne, those types of juicers. They're called centrifugal because they have a basket that spins around inside and centrifugally extracts the juice from the pulp. And these are not appropriate for a living foods lifestyle or raw foods lifestyle, because they cannot juice greens, and in general, there are a lot of things that they don't juice very well. So I would avoid getting a juicer like this, even though they may be inexpensive. Some of them are actually expensive, but I don't recommend those. Now, another thing you want to look at also is the possibility of getting a citrus juicer. And there are different kinds of citrus juicers. This is a manual. This is a very heavy-duty manual Orange X juicer that a lot of people recommend. And personally, I don't care for this juicer. I've used this one for a while, and the thing that I don't like about it, aside from it being very heavy, is that you can't put a bowl underneath it and juice a quantity of citrus juice. And so I actually find that I do, on occasion, need to juice a fair amount of citrus juice. So rather than buying one of these, I prefer to use an electric citrus juicer where you can juice a quantity of juice. And this is an inexpensive one. I would recommend getting a commercial heavy-duty one from a supplier, because these inexpensive ones don't have much power and they take a long time to use, whereas a good quality citrus juicer, usually they run about $100 to $150. They'll juice citrus really quickly. So if you're doing much citrus juicing, you can get a fast one, or you can just use one of these hand juicers. But that's with citrus. Now, the juicer that I recommend for all-around use in the kitchen every day is what's called a single auger juicer, which is kind of like a sausage grinder with a motor on it. It has an auger, just a single auger in here, and these tend to be the best value and give the best results for juicers. They will juice anything. They'll do greens, they'll do soft produce, they'll do hard produce, they'll homogenize nuts and seeds and things like coconut meat and turn it into a paste. So they will juice anything, and they do it well. Certain models do it well. There are also what are called twin gear juicers that look similar to this, and rather than having a single auger, they have two gears that mesh, and the produce is run between those gears. They typically run close to twice as much as single auger juicers, and they actually can extract less juice than what a single auger does, and they're much more difficult to assemble and clean, so I don't recommend them. In particular, juicers like the Green Star and the Green Power, they're good juicers, but the same company makes this juicer, which is the TriBest Solo Star 2. It's a good juicer. It extracts more juice than the twin gears. It's easier to clean. It comes with a 5-year warranty, and it works very well. It'll juice anything. So this is the juicer that I recommend. Omega also makes similar juicers to this. I've tested all of these juicers side by side, all of the decent juicers on the market, and to see which ones extract the most juice and which ones have the best value and the lowest price and that type of thing. And I think the Solo Star is the best value. The Omega juicer, the Omega 8003, 8005, it's very similar to this, but it doesn't extract as much juice. The pulp is wetter, and I just find that this one works better than the Omega. The Samson GB 9001, which is Samson's single auger juicer, I don't recommend that because it also has very wet pulp, and wet pulp means you're not extracting as much juice as you could be, and that adds up into significant amounts of money over time. So the Solo Star 2 is the juicer I recommend. Now, in addition to juicing, I want to show you how this thing works. It's very easy to take apart. This end piece comes off. It's got a round nozzle in it. It has several different nozzles. It's got a small hole, which typically I use all the time for juicing. I never really change that nozzle. So it does have a larger hole nozzle for softer produce and things that may not come through as easily. But I find there's really no need for that. And there are two pasta nozzles, that have little tiny holes in them. These are for making pasta with wheat and flour, and you're never going to do that with a raw food kitchen. So I say with the pasta nozzles, just throw them away because you won't need them. Okay? And really, the only nozzle you're ever going to use is the smaller hole. So you take the end of it off, and what you've got is this screen here where the juice is extracted out of. If you're homogenizing nuts and seeds or things like mature coconut meat, you can put this in, which is called a blank, and that's just a solid piece of plastic that goes in place of the screen, and you put that into the juicer, and you put the cap back on, and then you can run nuts and seeds, things like that through, and it will come out at the end into a nice powder or a paste, depending on whether or not the nuts and seeds are soaked or dry. And it cleans up very nicely. It's a low RPM. This runs at about 70 to 80 RPM. So the juice doesn't get heated up, and it doesn't kill beneficial enzymes in it. So this is the juicer I recommend. This usually runs around $250 in price, and the twin gear juicers typically run $400 to $500. So this is a good value. Now, people often ask me, what do I do on the road for juicing? When I'm traveling and stuff, people get used to drinking their juice and they don't want to give it up. And so there are a lot of people selling little portable juicers and manual juicers. And I've tested a lot of them, and I found the only one that I like that really works decently is the TriBest Z-Star juicer. And basically what it is a hand crank like this, and it has a clamp that you can attach it to a countertop, and the clamp just hooks like that, and you clamp it to a countertop. And the nice thing about this juicer handle is that if you already own a juicer with a motor, you can take the juicing attachment off of your motorized juicer and put it onto your Z-Star. And the nice thing about that is that you don't have to buy the full Z-Star juicer. It comes with its own juicing mechanism, but if you've already got a TriBest juicer, if you've already got a TriBest Solo Star, or if you've already got a Samson single auger juicer, or if you've already got an Omega juicer, this mount on the hand crank for the Z-Star will fit all of those juicers. So if you've got any one of those 3 juicers, you can just take your juicer attachment off of your motor, put it on this, and you can travel with it. And of course it breaks down, so it packs well, and it's not very heavy. It is made of metal. It's heavier than the inexpensive plastic juicers, but it lasts a lot longer, and it's a much sturdier juicer. But the bottom line is it juices much better than the other manual models. And as far as juicing wheatgrass, a lot of people will tell you that you need a dedicated wheatgrass juicer for juicing wheatgrass, and these days that is not true. These single auger juicers and the Z-Star will do as good, if not better job of juicing wheatgrass than a dedicated wheatgrass juicer. So I say there's no need to buy a dedicated wheatgrass juicer. So that's it for juicers. People often ask me what I actually eat, and if I actually eat all of these recipes that I make. And I do, but about 75% of my diet is green salads and sprouts. I love greens. I eat lots and lots of greens. And if you're going to be on a raw food diet long term, what you want to eat is a mainly green diet, high in greens and sprouts. And so you can buy sprouts in the store, but it's important to understand that you can grow sprouts extremely easy. And so I'm going to show you what I call kitchen sprouting, which is growing sprouts very simply in your kitchen. You don't need soil. It's very simple to do. So let me show you. First of all, you can go to grocery stores and you can get these little plastic containers, or you can get glass Pyrex containers, and just get, I would say, about a dozen of these. And what I do is I have 6 different sprouts going at a time, and so usually I'll have 6 of these sitting out on my kitchen counter with sprouts soaking, and then I'll have 6 of them in the fridge that I'm eating on. And so it's a good idea just to get, at least a dozen of those, I would say, and that way you've got a good variety of sprouts to choose from. But it's extremely simple. You just take one of these containers and you fill it with some bean sprout seeds or legume sprout seeds. These are mung beans, and we'll talk about what kinds of sprouts are available. But these are mung, and just put a little bit of water in there, just enough to cover it up, and just in case if it's got plenty of water to absorb. And I stir it around a little bit to make sure all the seeds are immersed. And I just put the cover on it. It doesn't matter if it's sealed up airtight. You just soak these for about 8 to 12 hours overnight. And normally I'll have about 6 of those at one time out on my kitchen counter. And what I sprout these are alfalfa sprouts. And with these, you can put them in a little fine mesh sprout bag and then soak them in the sprout bag overnight in the container, and then drain them. And then you can, once they grow little tails like this, you can dump them out and grow them. Actually, I grow them in a pie pan. I just have a little pie pan with holes punched in the bottom and sprout them in that. You can use a sprouting tray if you want to. I find that all these sprouting jars and sprouting trays and things like that are totally unnecessary for growing stuff in your kitchen. Outdoors, it's a different story if you're growing greens and things like that. But with alfalfa and little seeds like that, you just put them in a fine mesh bag. You can get at home supply stores, you can get these mesh screen bags for paint in the paint departments, or you can get them online at different places. You can actually go to beer making supply houses and get small mesh bags for making beer. So there's different sources, but I think the easiest thing is just go to a place like Home Depot, and you can get, in the paint department, you can get a fine mesh bag about 6 by 9 inches for the small seeds. And then I also like to sprout green peas. These are one of my favorites. I love these. They're sweet. They're real tender. And after you soak them overnight, all of these different seeds, you basically just rinse them off about 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, or when you get home from work, and then before you go to bed. And do that for just 2 or 3 days, and these will grow tails on them. And then you rinse them off one final time, and you can put them in your fridge. And then you just rinse them off about once a day, maybe not even that often. And you can keep them in your fridge and eat them. And they'll continue to grow in the fridge. while you're sprouting them. I've also got mung beans. These are very high in protein. All these sprouts are very high in protein, slam full of amino acids and all kinds of nutrients, and a lot of life force in them. These are mung beans. And adzuki beans. These are a Japanese red bean. They're very high in protein. All of these are just absolutely wonderful. People always ask where I get my protein from. This is one of the places I get my protein from. Sprouts are just full of protein and amino acids for building protein and muscle. These are fenugreek. Fenugreek are bitter, but they have a nice taste to them. I generally don't like bitter sprouts, but I do like fenugreek for some reason. They have a nice taste to them. These are great support for cancer. They are supposed to have very good cancer-fighting agents in them. And then also I sprout green lentils. You could also do red lentils, any kind of lentils. They're very high in protein also. And they're just so easy to do. All of these legume-type sprouts, you know, they sprout in 2 or 3 days, and they're easy to put in your kitchen, have them growing in your kitchen, soaking in your kitchen, and have them in your refrigerator. And so I constantly have 6 of these in my fridge to eat on, and I have 6 of them out on the counter soaking or sprouting, and I just rotate. So I'm constantly eating lots of sprouts, and that's what you want to do. Now, if you don't have time to grow sprouts nowadays, they're readily available in health food stores, most of them. They're pretty cheap. You can get mixtures of legume sprouts like these in little containers, and this is like $1.50. I mean, these are cheap. You can also get things like mung bean sprouts. This is another way of sprouting mung beans, which takes a little more time. You put them under pressure, and they'll sprout like this. I don't even bother with that because they're so easily available in stores. I just buy them, and they're inexpensive. But if you sprout them yourself, it's incredibly cheap. You can buy a 1-pound bag of any of these bean sprouts, any of these beans, organic for maybe $4 a pound, and that'll last you at least a month. I mean, they're just incredibly cheap. And so, you know, and if you're concerned about using plastic containers, you can also use covered Pyrex containers. I've never had a problem with off-gassing or anything like that with these containers. They're pretty inert. But if you've got, say, chemical sensitivity or something, you can grow them in Pyrex containers with covers on them. So very simple to do. I highly recommend it because this is what you want to be eating most of. You want to be eating a lot of sprouts and a lot of greens. Okay, we're going to juice some wheatgrass now, but before we start juicing, I want to talk to you a little bit about wheatgrass and why you would want to juice it to begin with. Wheatgrass juice is one of the most powerful things for regaining and optimizing health. You can drink it, you can put it in enemas, and you can put it in rectal implants. It's absolutely amazing for what it does, and there are some good books that you can read that give you information about it. 2 of the ones that I prefer are the Wheatgrass book by Ann Wigmore and Wheatgrass, Nature's Finest Medicine by Steve Meyerowitz. I think the Steve Meyerowitz book is a little bit more in-depth and has more information about it, and that's the book that I prefer. Ann Wigmore is the person who founded the whole wheatgrass movement in the United States back in the 1950s when she created Hippocrates Health Institute with Victoras Kulvinskas. So you can get books about wheatgrass and learn about why you want to drink wheatgrass juice and use it in other ways. There's a lot of different uses for it. You can use it in poultices and all kinds of things. It has absolutely amazing healing properties. The chlorophyll in the juice is very profoundly healing and rejuvenative to the body and the cells. So I would highly recommend learning about all of the reasons why you should use wheatgrass juice and what you can do with it. I'm going to show you how to juice it and what kind of juicer to use, okay? So, first of all, I'm using the Solo Star 2 juicer from TriBest. And this is a single auger juicer, and they call it a single auger because it has a corkscrew-like auger. There are twin gear juicers that also work well for juicing wheatgrass, and there are dedicated wheatgrass juicers. And I find that the single auger juicers work just as well as dedicated wheatgrass juicers, in particular the Solo Star does. And I don't see any reason to buy a dedicated wheatgrass juicer. It used to be that a dedicated wheatgrass juicer did a better job, but that's not the case anymore.
So I recommend just getting a Solo Star too. Champion juicers are very common in health food stores, and they're very popular, but they don't do wheatgrass. They will not juice wheatgrass. The grass gets wrapped up around the shaft of the juicer. And you also cannot use a centrifugal juicer, which is typically what you see in department stores. It's a juicer like this. It has a basket inside like this, a screen inside like that. These juicers will not do wheatgrass. They won't do leafy greens, and that's why you don't want to use a juicer like that. Okay. So I recommend using a good single auger juicer like the Solo Star, because they'll do everything. They'll do soft produce, hard produce. They'll homogenize nuts and coconut, and you can juice wheatgrass with them, and it does a good job. So first thing to do is put your juicer together. So I'm going to put the auger into the housing, and this juicer comes with a screen for juicing, and it comes with what they call a blank for homogenizing nuts and other things. And so we're going to use the juicing screen and just put it in there, and then we're going to put the end cap on. And then the juicer comes with two nozzles. One has a larger hole and one has a smaller hole. The smaller hole is what you want to use normally for juicing, and it just slides in like that. The larger hole you use for homogenizing nuts and seeds and other things, okay? And then also it's got a little hopper for making it easier to get things in the hole. Just put that on, and then the whole juicer assembly goes onto the motor like so. And I usually just twist it, and it locks like that. Okay? So when you're cleaning this, which I'll show you, you can just take this whole assembly off and take it to your sink and clean it without having to pull it apart on your countertop. So we've got that, and then we have the two containers. One is to collect the juice, and you collect the juice under here. The juice comes out down here, and then the pulp comes out the end of the nozzle here into this container. And just turn the juicer on and just grab a small portion of grass. If you take too much, it just makes it hard to get it into the juicer, and so we're just going to do small amounts of time. And you just push it on in. Just keep grabbing and shoving, and you are going to drop blades of grass, so don't worry about it. Just push the stuff on in. And if you drop some grass, you can pick it up later. And typically when you drink wheatgrass juice, you drink about 2 ounces at a time, and you can do that a couple of times a day. I've heard of people drinking 8 ounces a day and seeing absolutely phenomenal results. Some people say that if you drink more than 2 ounces at a time, that it doesn't do you any good. I don't believe that. I think the more, the better. And down there. Okay. Okay, and if you notice this pulp, you can take a close shot of that pulp. You can see that's very dry pulp. This juicer does a great job. It actually does a better job than dedicated wheatgrass juicers. I've seen $2,000 wheatgrass juicers that don't do as good of a job as this juicer. So that's one reason why I recommend the Solo Star. That's very dry pulp. It's very crumbly and very dry. And you just take the juice and pour up about 2 ounces of it, and that right there is about 2 ounces of wheatgrass juice, and you just slug it down. And ideally you want to drink wheatgrass juice on an empty stomach and wait at least a half an hour before you eat anything to get optimal benefits from it. But a lot of people, especially when they first start drinking wheatgrass juice, it may upset their stomach because it's very strong, it's very potent. A good wheatgrass juice tastes sweet. A lot of these wheatgrasses that you see in health food stores, they're hydroponic. They taste bitter and they have a really terrible taste. Good wheatgrass is sweet, and you can grow wheatgrass yourself for pennies. You can also buy it at different places. People grow it and sell it cut in bags. So, at any rate, that's juicing wheatgrass. All right, so how do we clean the juicer? Well, I'm going to show you. It's very simple, actually, especially with wheatgrass. It's very, very simple. Basically, you just turn the collar on the juicer motor. The whole unit comes out. And normally what I do is I take the juice can and hold it underneath just in case it drips anything. Put it over the sink, and then this hopper just comes right off. And this piece twists right off. And the screen comes out, and the auger's coming out with it. And you can just take the auger and everything apart. So I take everything apart, and it just rinses off. With wheatgrass, it's actually very easy. It really just rinses off. Everything just falls off. It's extremely easy to do. And I use a little sprayer to clean the inside out, like so. The screen just rinses off normally. The grass just falls right off of it. You can see. It just comes right off. Turn the hopper. And then the nozzle. And you'll get a little plug of grass in there. You can push it through with your fingers, or you can take the brush that comes with it. And it just comes out like that. Very simple. Very easy. Rinse everything off. And then, of course, you can rinse the juicing containers. And then the pulp, people always ask me, can you do anything with the pulp? Well, you can. You can take wheatgrass juice and wet the pulp, and you can actually put this in a bandage and put a bandage over a skin lesion or a bug bite or moles, any kind of a skin problem, and put it on topically, and you can heal all kinds of skin problems with that. Normally I just compost it, but sometimes I will use it as a poultice. And that's all there is to cleaning it. Sometimes I will take the motor, and this motor is sealed around in this area here. And so a lot of times I'll take it over to the sink and I'll spray that out and shake it a little bit. It's okay to do that if you get juice backing up into there. Normally you won't get juice in there, but if you do, then that's all you got to do. And that's cleaning the juicer.
The first thing we're going to make is called Ken's Green Drink. It's a green drink that I came up with years ago, and I wanted something that was very detoxifying. So this has a lot of parsley in it. It's got kale in it, which is very high in calcium and protein. It's got red bell peppers and tomatoes in it for taste, and it's got cucumber in it to provide a lot of liquid. And so before we get started making it, though, I want to show you a little bit about the equipment that I'm using. This is the Solo Star juicer that I mentioned before, and this is a wood bamboo cutting board. I prefer using wood cutting boards over plastics and synthetics and glass. I've had all of those, and glass cutting boards and hard cutting boards tend to dull your knives, and the plastics and rubbers tend to warp, and I've just never been happy with any of them except for the wooden boards. Rock maple is also a very good board. I like them good and thick so that they don't warp from use, because if you get thinner ones, they will warp just from chopping on them. And occasionally it's a good idea to oil them with some coconut oil. The board manufacturers tell you to oil them with mineral oil, but mineral oil is toxic and I don't like using it, so I prefer to use coconut oil. Also, underneath the board, I like to use one of these non-slip rubber mats that you can get in any department store, discount stores. It makes the board stay in place, and it also keeps it quiet when you're cutting. So there's just two little tricks that I like to do. Now, the first thing we're going to do is show you how to cut cut a red bell pepper. And there are several different ways to do that. The technique that I like to use is pretty simple. Just cut the red bell pepper right down the middle. And what I do is I take the stem and just pop it out like a button, toss it off to the side, and I compost all of my scraps. And pop that out, and then I'll pull out some of the white interior and compost that. And then normally I'll just rinse these off and get rid of the seeds, okay? And in this recipe, I use 2 red bell peppers. Now another technique that some people like to use for cutting open a red bell pepper is to cut down like this around the sides, and that leaves the inside with the seeds and everything intact, and then cut down like this, and then you can snap off the top. And this is kind of a strange shape one, but normally if you have a regular shaped red bell pepper, it'll pop right off. But I'm not very good at that technique. I like using my technique. But at any rate, you take 2 red bell peppers, cut them into slices. And actually, it's a good idea not to scrape your knife across the cutting board like I was just doing. Cut those into slices. We take 2 tomatoes, and we cut them up into slices that we can run through the juicer. And these are pretty thick tomatoes, so I'm going to cut them up a little more. And normally when you're when you're doing this juice or any juices, the soft stuff will go through the juicer slower than stringy stuff like greens or harder things like carrots. So typically what I do is alternate the soft stuff through the juicer with the harder stuff. I'm going to take 2 cucumbers. That's 2 red bell peppers, 2 tomatoes, 2 cucumbers, a bunch of kale, and a bunch of parsley. And I'm going to take the cucumber and just cut it into quarters lengthwise so that it'll feed through the juicer chute. Okay. And it's always a good idea to have a sharp knife because a dull knife is actually more dangerous than a sharp knife. All right. I'll get the cucumbers cut, and I've got some parsley here, and we're going to use what would normally be a bunch of parsley when you buy it from the grocery store. This is more than that, but I'm just going to grab about a bunch. So we turn our juicer on, and we just feed the cucumber down through the juicer. And normally, I just shove this stuff on down with the feeder with the plunger. And you can see the pulp comes out the end of the juicer and the juice comes out of the front here. And 1 container of this is about 24 ounces, 20 ounces, somewhere around there. And normally, just for myself, this recipe makes enough juice for 2 people. Normally for myself, I'll make this for my wife and I. So if you're going to just do this for 1 person, you can cut it in half, or you can drink twice as much. All right, we got our cucumbers through there. And normally when I do this, I'm pretty quick with this. I just shove this stuff on down through, and in the morning, from start to finish, it takes about 30 minutes between cleaning the produce, cutting it, setting up the juicer, and cleaning the juicer, everything. It takes about 30 minutes to make enough juice for my wife and I. So it's not bad. I'll feed some of the red bells through. Just shove it on in there. You don't have to be dainty with it. And when your juicer cup starts to fill up, you can turn the juicer off. And you notice I've got a paper towel underneath this to catch any drips. And I just slide the pulp cup over for a moment and I pour it into a larger container. And I go back to juicing. All right, I'm going to cut this up a little bit more. All right, back to the juicing. I have seen amazing results with this green drink on myself and other people. I have people come to my workshops and I tell them about this juice and they go home and they make it, and the next thing you know I get a phone call from somebody saying, oh, I had this problem, I had that problem, and it went away, just in a few days after doing this drink. It's very alkalizing to the body. It's very high in chlorophyll. Parsley is well known for pulling heavy metals out of the body. And also, it's very high in protein. One of the things that people often think is that, on a vegetarian diet you can't get enough protein. And of course, that raises the question of, first of all, how much protein do we need? And how does the body really get protein? And as it turns out, when you're eating meat, the body is actually breaking the meat down into amino acids that the body can use, and then reassembling it into proteins. And so, with plant material, the amino acids are already there. The plant protein doesn't have to be broken down the way that meat does. So you're actually getting the amino acids in a much easier format to assimilate and build protein. So actually, with a vegetarian diet, and particularly raw vegetarian diet, you get plenty of protein eating greens and sprouts. And so you're getting a significant amount of protein in this drink. I would say, from what I understand, this drink has more protein than most Americans get in about 3 days. So you're getting plenty of protein in this stuff through amino acids. So we've got the soft stuff through. I'm going to run the kale through and just fish it on through there. And one thing I do is snap it off, and I'll just shove it on in and snap it and shove it. You can get pretty quick with this. Just let it grab it, push it in, snap it off, shove it in, and just feed it on down there. You don't want to push too much through at one time, because that's where you'll get clogging. Just shove it on in there, snap it off. I kind of hold it in there with the plunger when I snap it off. And you can see the greens don't put out a lot of juice, but they put out a very, very dense green juice. And it's very concentrated chlorophyll. So just shove it on in there. There you go, get on in there. And last, we add some parsley. And this is a whole lot of parsley here, but with this recipe, you want to add about a bunch of parsley from the grocery store, what would normally be a bunch, which, would be about this much right here, I would say. And so we're going to feed that through, and that'll be the last bit of it for the green drink. So, and I just shove this stuff through. I'm going to tuck it in there. Shove it on in. More shoving. And again, you don't have to worry about breaking the juicer. It's pretty robust, and you can push it on down there. You don't want to grab too much at one time, because it'll just get stuck in the bottom, and it'll be difficult to get it through. But I kind of push it in with my fingers, and then I push it on through with the plunger. There we go. Take the juice. I'll slide that pulp bucket over there and pour that in there. Now that's some serious chlorophyll there. And it may not look like much, but I'll tell you what, that is some dense stuff. Now, let's stir it up. Now you look at this and you say, oh my God, that looks terrible. That is so dark green. That just looks, it doesn't look very appetizing, but I'll tell you, it actually tastes a lot better than it looks. It tastes pretty decent, and it's extremely detoxifying to the body. And of course, if you want a less of a green taste, you can add more cucumber, more red bell pepper, more tomato. But this is how much I drink every day, and it's really wonderful. So, cheers. It's actually really good. Okay, now we're going to make a drink called Ken's Cute Cooler, which is a nice summertime drink. It's mainly cucumber juice. It's got lime and mint in it, and you can even sweeten it with a little stevia. It's absolutely wonderful. It's a great drink when you're thirsty and hot in the summertime. It's a great drink really anytime. But at any rate, what we do is start out with 2 medium to large cucumbers, and I've cut them into quarters to run them through the juicer. We've got several sprigs of mint. This is spearmint, not peppermint. Peppermint's a little bit too strong. And then we've got a lime, and I'm going to cut that in half. And you notice I'm going to cut this in half lengthwise from one end to the other end, not across the middle. And I'll show you why. I'll cut it in half, and then I'm going to cut it in quarters. And then, so that I can run it through the juicer, I don't want to run the rind through the juicer because it's going to be bitter. So what I do is I just take a little nick at the end of the lime, and then I peel it. I peel the skin back like this, okay? And then I peel the lime off of I peel the skin off, compost the skin, and then it's ready to run through the juicer like that, okay? So I'm going to do half a lime like that. You could use lemon if you don't have lime, but lime just has a different flavor, and it's just very nice. So I'm going to peel that and compost that, and we're ready to run it through the juicer. Okay? So I'll start out with a cucumber. Now, I'm going to throw a little bit of the mint in there along with the cucumber. I'll go ahead and run that through. And I'll go ahead and throw in the lime. And I'll feed the rest of the cucumber through. Okay, I'll get done with the cucumber, and I just want to show you it's got a really beautiful color to it. Pour that in, let you see the color on that. It's lighter, and it's just absolutely wonderful. I just want to say you can also, like I say, you can add stevia to it. You can add a few drops of stevia. This is Now brand stevia, and give it a sweet flavor. And so if you want it sweet, you can do that. It's absolutely wonderful. Chocolate smoothie time. Who doesn't like a chocolate smoothie? This one is absolutely wonderful. It's bananas, chocolate, coconut, water, and goji berries. And goji berries are some little red berries from China and Tibet that are extremely high in vitamin C. They're very high in antioxidants. They're absolutely wonderful, very healthy for you. So what I do for one person is I take 2 bananas and I just throw them in a blender. I break them up a little bit. Throw them in a blender. And usually it's about 2 bananas is good for one person. You might want a little bit less, a little bit more. I just break them up, throw them in the blender. And then I take raw chocolate, also known as cacao. And this is pure chocolate seeds or beans right off the tree. I'm going to put them in a spice mill, which is like a coffee grinder. You can use a coffee grinder just as well, just to powder them up. You don't have to powder them. You can throw them right in the blender as they are. These are called cacao nibs. And they're kind of like really coarse coffee grounds, but that's made out of pure chocolate. And I use 1 rounded tablespoon per banana. And so I just throw that in the spice mill. turn it on and blend it and powder it really quick. And when I stop hearing it clicking and ticking, I know that it's powdered. And I just dump that into the, if I can get my cord unhooked, I just dump that into the blender. And scrape out any chocolate that's stuck inside of there. Okay. And I'm going to save the coconut and the goji berries to mix them into the smoothie after I blend it, because I like to have a little texture in my smoothie, and the coconut thickens it up really nicely. So I'll add those later. So let's go ahead and blend this. I'll go ahead and get this on, and then make sure it's on low, and let's blend it.
Hey, Ken, old buddy, how you doing? What's going on? What's cooking? What's happening? You got any burgers? You got any burritos here?
That's okay. We'll edit this out. We'll stop and edit this out. Okay, Jeff. Man, I'm filming a video here.
A video?
I'm sorry. This is my friend Jeff McFeely, or as we like to call him, Touchy McFeely.
Touchy.
So what's up?
Yeah. You know this whole thing with calling me Touchy McFeely? I don't get it. I mean, people call me this.
You're always touching people, man.
No. Some of the play on words going on there. Ready? But anyhow, what's happening here?
I'm doing a raw food video.
You got salad?
I'm showing people how to make raw food, man. This is a chocolate smoothie I'm making.
Yeah. Well, what's with the sign on the door?
Well, the sign was to keep people out. It was, didn't you see it? I mean, it said we're videotaping.
Yeah, I saw it.
No interruptions.
But that's for your family or your friends or neighbors, not for me. I'm your buddy. Come on, I'm your buddy.
You're my
Anyways,
buddy,
I'm in sales. Can you imagine if every time I went up to a door and it said like no trespassing and no solicitation and no salesman, I listened to it, I'd be out of business. Salesmen of the world would be out of business. The thing would stop dead. You got any fried food here? Anything like that?
No, I don't have any fried food.
No,
it's all raw vegetarian, no beer.
Yeah,
I used to make my own beer, but not anymore.
This is salad. This is rabbit food.
No,
rabbit food.
You build strong bones and muscles with rabbit food.
Rabbit food. You know the old story about the rabbit's foot, right? It's real lucky. People carry around rabbit's foot. Wasn't lucky for the rabbit, was it? He had 4 of them. And you know why? Because he eats this stuff.
I'll tell you what. You eat this stuff, you're going to feel good.
Do you seriously eat this stuff?
I seriously eat it. This is all I eat.
Whoa. I had 5 giant coffees today. I got to go. I mean, I really got to go.
All right, you go. All right.
Buddy.
All right, I'll see you. Somebody lock the door, please. Okay, so anyway, let's go ahead and blend this. Put on low. Oh, forgot water. That's what happens when you get interrupted. Okay, so let me put some water. And you just put enough water to cover the bananas. Yeah, just about like that. Put it in there. And I usually turn it off and turn it back on just to catch any banana that may get stuck in the bottom. Then I'll go ahead and pour it in the glass and add the coconut and the gojis. I'll leave a little room for the gojis and the coconut. And I love coconut, so I'm not shy about it. I'll put a few tablespoons in there. And a few gojis, maybe a tablespoon of gojis. And then just mix it all in there. And you got a nice thick smoothie. It's awesome. I wish you could taste that. I have another smoothie I love I call it Deep Blue. It's blueberry smoothie. It's got blueberries, bananas, water, coconut, and if you like to add it as an option, you can put in blueberry concentrate, and it's really wonderful. Same basic recipe as all of my smoothies. You just take 2 bananas per person. And I compost the skins, and I just break them up, throw them in the blender. And I'm going to go with that. And then I'll just throw in however many blueberries I feel like that day. And usually, pretty much on any day, I feel like a lot of blueberries because I really love blueberries. And of course, with a smoothie, you can use any kind of fruit. But for this one, I'm going to throw a lot of blueberries in here. These are absolutely wonderful organic blueberries. They're so sweet and they're absolutely great. And they're slam full of antioxidants as well. So throw in some of those. And normally I mix in the dry coconut, the shredded coconut, in the glass after I blended it. But I'm going to go ahead and throw it in the blender because that doesn't hurt anything. So I'll do a few tablespoons of that, big heaping tablespoons because I love coconut also. Maybe 3 tablespoons of coconut. And then this is blueberry concentrate. And this comes from a company called Herbisway, and it's called Blueberry Magic. This is incredible. It's very expensive, though. A 2-ounce bottle is $25, so it's not something that I'm going to do every day. But every once in a great while, it's really wonderful. You don't need this in this blueberry smoothie, but you take a few dropperfuls of that and squirt it in, and oh, man, it's good. So we'll do that. Oh, it even smells incredible. Whew. All right, and then pour water up to the level of the fruit. Cold water, by the way. If you don't have cold water handy, then just throw in some ice cubes and a little bit more water so that it doesn't get too thick. And some people like to use orange juice. That's fine too. And blend it up. Do another little blendy blend to catch any banana that may be left. And then we serve it. And this is awesome. Look at that. Look at that color. That is incredible. Yummy, yummy, yummy. That is awesome. Taste that. That's awesome. And you know what? You can throw chocolate in there. You can throw in raw cacao. Incredible. A while back, I got an idea for making homemade sports drinks, or Gatorades, if you want to call them that, from Dr. Doug Graham, who is a raw food pioneer. And he had some great ideas for making homemade sports drinks to replenish the body's electrolytes and nutrients when you're doing physical activity or sports or anything like that. And so he had a nice recipe of taking a banana in a quart of water and blending it and just drinking that before doing any physical exertion, and then drinking it again after doing the exertion. And I tried it, and it really works. It really you have more energy when you're doing the physical activity, and then when you get done, you recover much faster and you feel better. So I took his idea and I made some other recipes for sports drinks, and one of them is a pineapple drink. I also like to do watermelon and apple. That's a really wonderful drink, and I've got a recipe in my book for that. But I'm going to show you how to make a pineapple sports drink, and I'm also in the process going to show you how to peel and quarter a pineapple, because it seems to be something a lot of people are not quite sure about. But basically, you take a pineapple, turn it on its side, cut the top off, and actually, I've cut this one very close to the top. But if you cut a little bit farther down into the fruit of the pineapple, you can actually take it, and if you live in a warm area like Florida, you can put it in the ground and grow it, and it'll grow like a weed. They're just amazing, and then you'll have pineapples for yourself. But I cut that one off very close. I'm gonna compost that. I'll get this out of the way. And so I cut the top off, cut the bottom off, And then go around and cut the sides, peel them down kind of close to the skin. And the trick to doing this is to not try to cut too much at one time. Just cut thin ribbons. And I don't even mind leaving a few of the little brown circles on there. But you just go around, trim that off. Okay. And put those in the compost. And then cut it lengthwise down the middle into quarters. Yeah. Then you pull the quarters apart, and you can cut the core out just by going down like that. And usually the cores are pretty soft and chewable, so a lot of times I'll just chew on them. And that one's soft enough you can actually eat it. So you cut the cores out. Always helps to have a sharp knife. And then once you got those out, you know, you can cut it up any way you want. I usually just cut it into large chunks for the blender. And what I do is, you want to put enough pineapple in there that it has a good pineapple flavor, but you also want to have plenty of water so that it's not a smoothie, it's watery. And so with maybe, you know, 1.5 cups, 2 cups of pineapple, I would put about twice as much water in there. Okay. And then very simply, you just blend it and you drink it. And it's watery, but it has a wonderful flavor. And especially if you're going to go out doing yard work or exercising or something like that, you can drink this before and you can drink it afterwards. So let's blend it up. Okay. And what happens is it gets really nice and foamy and frothy. It grows in volume, and that is so nice. It's nice and creamy. It's just really wonderful. And, you know, you do this before exercising, it's great. And you can use other types of fruit. Basically, just use a lot of water, a little bit of fruit. It's awesome. One of my favorite salad dressings, and the one that I make the most and most often because it's so easy to do, is what I call a Mediterranean dressing. And it's very common in the Mediterranean for people to just squeeze a little lemon juice or lime juice over a salad with a little good quality olive oil and a little salt and pepper. And that is the recipe. It's very simple to do. Basically just take either a lemon or a lime, and I prefer limes. Just cut one in half. You've got your salad. Just take a fork, stick it in the lemon or the lime half, and just squeeze and twist. And you can spread the lemon juice around on the salad. And you don't need a whole lot of lemon juice. Actually, the oil and the salt and pepper give it most of the flavor. And I like using olive oil, but you can also use a good quality cold-pressed organic sunflower oil. That's a little bit lighter than olive if you want something different than olive. There's all kinds of incredible raw oils that you can buy, different brands of olive oils, but the oil really makes it. And, you know, it's important when doing this to use a good olive oil. So after the lemon juice, I usually sprinkle a little bit of salt on it. And what we have here is we've got whole unrefined Celtic salt. This is a gray salt. It's gray and it's a little bit damp. The grayness is the minerals in it, and the dampness comes from it being harvested by hand and sun-dried, so it's still got a little moisture in it. But I like using Himalayan crystal salt. This is actually a little bit pink, and it's a whole unrefined salt. It's got a lot of minerals in it. And a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. Sprinkle a little bit of black pepper around there. And then I put the olive oil on. and then just toss it. And it's just extremely easy to do. Has a wonderful flavor. And that's what I do. It's so easy, and that's it. All right, let's make a Lebanese dressing now. This is a really tasty, wonderful dressing inspired from an old Greek friend of mine. Just take half a lemon, and I'm going to knock out some of the seeds. Actually, there's not many seeds in this one, and I just juice it with a fork. Normally, when I'm juicing lemons, a half lemon or a whole lemon, I'll just use a fork like this instead of a citrus juicer. If I was doing a whole bunch of these, maybe I might, if I was making a large quantity of it. And I just juice it, and then I'll take the fork and scrape the pulp into the bowl, like so. Compost the rind, and then I just take the seeds out with a fork, compost them. Okay, and then I'll take a quarter cup of water, pour that in, and then we'll take 2 tablespoons of chopped parsley. So I'm going to grab a little bit of parsley, and we'll chop it up. And when you're chopping, just use a rocking motion with a flat blade knife or a rounded blade knife. And I keep my fingers straight down so they don't get underneath the parsley. And then I can use this technique for chopping things fine. Just put your fingers at the end of the knife, and you can chop very finely, very quickly. Now clean the sides of the knife off. That looks pretty good. I'll take 2 tablespoons of that. Where's my tablespoon? Let me get a tablespoon. So there's 1. And there's 2. Okay. Then we're going to do 2 tablespoons of fresh mint. And this is spearmint. Peppermint's too strong. We want 2 tablespoons of that after it's chopped. And I'm going to pull the leaves off the stem. I'll compost that. There we go. I think we're going to do a little bit more than that. Okay. I'll give it a choppy. And you really need to use fresh herbs with this. If you're using dried herbs, it's just not going to have the same flavor. And of course, it's not going to have the same nutrition, and it's not going to have the enzymes, and it's going to lose some of the nutrients and chemicals. So this dressing, and any dressing really, I think it's best to use fresh herbs, fresh ingredients. Okay, so we have 2 tablespoons of mint. Yeah. Okay. And then we're going to use 1 clove of garlic chopped, and these are pretty good sized garlic cloves. Okay. So, same type of chopping. Now you could use a garlic press, and actually that's easier if you've got a garlic press. Those are wonderful. You stick the clove in there and squish it out. It's much faster. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I like to chop it for the texture. Mince the garlic. Okay. So there's 1 clove of garlic. Load it up on my knife, load it into the bowl. Alrighty, now we're going to put in 1 tablespoon of raw organic tahini. And this is, you can get this in health food stores. It's actually raw. It's unheated, untreated, uncooked. And it's nice and
thick. This is a wonderful flavor. It's also, it gives you oil for the dressing, and it thickens it up. We're going to use 4 tablespoons of organic cold-pressed sunflower oil. Excuse me. You can also use olive oil if you want to. Let me get my sunflower oil. Or you could use safflower oil. For this dressing, I like a lighter taste, so I use sunflower oil. 4 tablespoons. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. I'm going to leave the spoon in that bowl. And we're going to throw in a teaspoon of whole unrefined salt. In this case, this is Himalayan crystal salt. A teaspoon. Okay. And we're going to use a spice, a Middle Eastern spice called sumac. It's a red spice. It's not the same as sumac that they sell in the United States for making tea with, like a lemonade flavored tea. This is a Middle Eastern spice called sumac. It's got a beautiful dark amber color, or not amber, but red color, a burgundy color, and it's got a kind of a salty taste to it. It's got its own unique flavor. You can get this in Middle Eastern stores. It's a really wonderful spice. We're going to use a teaspoon of that. We're going to put in we're going to use a teaspoon of ground black pepper. Okay. About like that. Okay. And we're just going to stir it up. Oh. Get that tahini mixed up, get all the oils mixed up. And it's got a nice kind of a reddish-green mixture of colors. It's really wonderful. And you just pour it over a salad. It's wonderful. Now, if you like French dressing, you're in luck, because I have a French dressing recipe, and this is it. You start with 1 medium tomato, just cut it up, throw it in the food processor. And take a green onion and chop it up into small pieces, just to get it in the food processor. All right, and then we're going to take 2 tablespoons of chopped mint, and I'm just going to chop it up roughly. Okay, that looks like about 2 tablespoons right there. All right, 2 tablespoons of mint, and we're going to take 2 tablespoons of fresh lime juice. I'm going to take 2 tablespoons of this, juice it up into a little bowl, and I always like scraping the pulp into the juice. Yeah, 2 tablespoons. There's 1, 2. Alrighty, then we're going to take a tablespoon of plain old organic yellow mustard. This is not Dijon, and it's not anything fancy. It's just plain organic mustard. You can use Dijon or something else if you like. And we're going to call that a tablespoon. Alright, we're going to throw in a clove of garlic. And we're going to throw in a tablespoon. Let me get a clean spoon. We're going to throw in a tablespoon. No, I'm sorry. We're going to throw in a teaspoon of whole unrefined salt. Let me put this back. So we've got about a teaspoon of salt. That's Himalayan Celtic salt. Okay, a half teaspoon of black pepper. There's about a half teaspoon. All right, and to sweeten it up, we're going to put about 10 drops of Now brand stevia. I like using this brand of stevia because it doesn't have a bitter aftertaste, and it says on the label, no bitter aftertaste. It's wonderful. So we're going to use that, 10 drops. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and one to grow on. Sometimes this stuff can be hard to get out of the bottle, but 10 drops of stevia. Okay. And then we're going to close up the food processor. And then we're going to blend this, and then we're going to drizzle olive oil into it. So I'm going to take the hole out of there so we can pour this in. I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to start drizzling this in, drizzling the olive oil. Oh, it smells so good. It just smells wonderful. And when it's nice and creamy, we've got French dressing. I'm going to show that to you. Show that, okay. There it is. It's wonderful. All the little green spices and things in it. It's just so wonderful. I call this dressing Jackie Chan's house dressing because I hear Jackie Chan uses it at his house, but I invented it. So anyway, here's how you make it. We're going to take 5 tablespoons of water to start off with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to take 2 tablespoons of either Bragg's liquid aminos or namashoyu. Namashoyu is raw soy sauce. Nama means raw in Japanese, and shoyu means soy sauce in Japanese. Bragg's liquid aminos essentially is soy sauce. It tastes just like soy sauce. There are some people out there saying that Bragg's is not good for you and it's unhealthy and this and that. And Hippocrates Health Institute has done some research and they say it's fine. I've never had any problem with it, and I like the taste of Bragg's better. So I prefer Bragg's. I prefer the taste of Bragg's, but you can use either one, whichever you choose. So we're going to use 2 tablespoons of Bragg's. One, 2. Okay. We're going to use 4 tablespoons of grated ginger. And I like to freeze my ginger because it keeps much longer that way, and it also is easier to grate actually than fresh ginger. But you know, if you want fresh ginger, that's fine. And I'm just going to grate 4 tablespoons. That's quite a bit of ginger. Okay. And that beautiful ginger. There's 1. 2. Now you see how fluffy this ginger is. It's because it's frozen. So if you're using fresh, it's not going to be that fluffy. So you might want to cut it in about half. There's 3 and 4. Okay. We're going to use 2 tablespoons of toasted sesame oil. Now, toasted sesame oil is not raw, so if you're a raw food purist, you can use raw cold-pressed sesame oil. It's not going to have the same flavor. There's really nothing that has the same taste as toasted sesame oil. But so we're going to use 2 tablespoons of this. And 1 and 2. Okay. And then we're going to spice it up a little bit and put in a teaspoon or so of chopped hot chili. And I just use these little hot peppers here. You can use whatever your favorite hot pepper is. Jalapenos don't really seem to work with this recipe. They have a sort of a Mexican flavor, and so I'll use something like the typical green chili you find in the store. And that little red chili there, let's see, a teaspoon. And we're going to put that in there. And you can see that's not even a teaspoon, but I'll tell you what, that's plenty of spice. So you just do it according to your taste. And then we're going to do, we're going to put 2 cloves of garlic in there. We're going to chop it up, mince it. You can use a garlic press if you want to. It's a little faster to crush the garlic, but then you got to clean the press, so it's kind of a trade-off. I'll just go ahead and mince it with a knife. And this one you want to mince finely because you want to get that garlic flavor mixing in with the sauces and the liquids. One more round. Okay. There we go. I'll tell you, my wife is Chinese, and you know she likes this dressing. This has got a definite Asian Chinese flavor, and then we just stir it up. Very simple, wonderful Asian flavor, and you can put that on salads. You can put it on Asian salads or any kind of vegetable. It's just absolutely great. We're going to make a Japanese dressing now, and this dressing goes over my daikon salad recipe. So first we're going to start with a 1/4 cup of water. And we're going to add 1/3 cup of Bragg's liquid aminos or namashoyu. So let me see here. Okay. 1/3 cup of that. We're going to use 1/3 cup of a light oil like sunflower oil or safflower oil. Raw, of course, organic, cold pressed. We're going to use 1/3 cup of this. Okay. And we're going to use 5 tablespoons of chopped sweet pickled ginger. Now, for you raw food purists, this is not raw, but it is. It really makes the Japanese dressing, and it's. You can make your own raw pickled ginger if you want. Actually, there are recipes out on the internet for doing that. Basically, involves taking ginger and slicing it, putting it in raw vinegar, and soaking it with some sweeteners and things. But so we're gonna take 5 tablespoons chopped. So let me chop this up, and this is actually. This is from Eden Foods, this brand of pickled ginger, and it comes with an herb called shiso leaves in it. So that's what we've got in here. You don't have to have the shiso leaves. But I would avoid buying the pickled gingers in Asian groceries because usually it's not anywhere close to organic. It may have all kinds of pesticides. It may even be genetically engineered. So I would get the stuff from the health food store. All right, we're going to chop this up. And I just chop this for the recipe so that you can see how much to use. Normally, I just grab a bunch of it and throw it in a food processor and blend this stuff. And you can make this in a food processor, or you can just do it like we're doing and just chop this stuff up and put it in a bowl and mix it. Like that. And we're going to use 5 tablespoons, so there's 1, and there's 2, and there's 3, 4, and 5. I'm just going to go ahead and throw it all in there. Okay. And then we're going to use 4 tablespoons of lemon juice. And a lot of times I will take lemon juice and squeeze a bunch of lemons and put it in a jar and keep in the fridge. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're going to call that 4 because that's probably about 4. All All right, and then you just stir it up, and it makes a beautiful brown, sweet Asian Japanese flavor. It's just wonderful. Now, if you want to, optionally, you can add 4 tablespoons of white rice wine or sake. If you don't mind doing that. I don't drink, and I don't usually drink. I don't put alcohol in my recipes, but it'll make it taste more authentic and more Japanese. But you just stir that up, and then we're going to use this in the daikon salad recipe. Well, if you're making dips and guacamole, you've got to have something to dip in it. And so, in addition to using veggie slices and things, I'm going to show you how to make corn chips so you can dip it in your guacamole. Now, the first thing you do is take fresh corn on the cob, cut it off the cob, down close to the cob. And the trick to doing this is to not try and cut too much off at one time. Just cut off a little section close to the cob. Okay. Like so. Sharp knife always helps. We're going to use 3 cups of cut corn, which is about 3 average cobs of corn. And we're going to take that and put it into the food processor. Then we're going to take 1 cup of dry almonds, and we're going to soak them for 6 to 8 hours, and that'll make about 1.5 to 2 cups of almonds wet. We're going to throw that in. And then we're going to take 1 cup of golden flax seeds, and we're going to soak them for 2 to 8 hours until they become soft. And so these are soaked flax seeds. They become kind of gelatinous, and they expand greatly, but that's 1 cup after it's been soaked, and that probably becomes about 3 cups of flax after it's been soaked. Let me get that out. Okay. Then we're going to take 1 red bell pepper with the seeds and stem removed. And we're going to take 1/2 cup of chopped onion, just roughly chopped. Throw that in. Okay. And we're going to take 1.5 tablespoons of unrefined, unheated salt. This is Himalayan salt. There's 1.5. Then we're going to take 2 tablespoons of fresh oregano, chopped. And just strip it off the stems, like so. Chop it. You could use dry oregano. It's not as tasty as this. And the whole purpose of making these crackers rather than buying crackers is because when they're dehydrated at low temperature, below 115 degrees, the enzymes stay intact. And so they're actually a live food with live enzymes. And that's what you want. That's what gives you your health in all these foods, along with the nutrients of the organic food, is the enzymes. And so we want to keep those enzymes alive. Now, Gabriel Cousins and Excalibur, the manufacturers of one of the leading dehydrators, they've done research, and they found that you can actually run your dehydrator up around 160 degrees for the first couple of hours. And because the material is wet, it won't get over 115 degrees, and so the enzymes stay intact. So for the first couple of hours, 2-3 hours, when we dehydrate these crackers, what we're going to do is pour this after we blend it onto a dehydrator sheet, and we're going to dehydrate it for about 3 hours, and then we're going to flip it to dehydrate the underside of it. And so in the beginning, we're going to dehydrate it at a higher temperature, about 145 degrees, which normally would kill the enzymes, but because it's wet, the air blowing across it will keep the temperature below 115. Okay, there's 1 tablespoon, and there's 2. And if you don't feel comfortable with setting your dehydrator that high, you can set it to 110 degrees or so, and it'll just take a little bit longer. But it's no big deal. So we got everything in the food processor, and then we just turn it on and we just run it till it's a fine pulp. we're finished processing this stuff. Now we're going to open it up. And what we have is a mixture that's real gelatinous and goopy. Goopy, gloppy, gelatinous mixture, and that's what you want. Okay. And we're going to take a dehydrator tray. This is a 15-inch dehydrator tray from an Excalibur dehydrator. I've used other kinds of dehydrators, and I think for really living this lifestyle, Excalibur makes the best dehydrator. The 9-tray and the 5-tray dehydrators are good. I think actually, really, honestly, a 9-tray is what you're going to need if you're really going to be doing this as a lifestyle. The other dehydrators I've used pull air from the bottom of the dehydrator up to the top or blow it up. And the disadvantages of that over time are that stuff in the dehydrator drops down into the fan and makes a mess. And so I really think the Excalibur, where it blows the air across the food, seems to have the best results and it's easiest to clean. So anyway, this is an Excalibur dehydrator tray. And all we do is take about, maybe 2.5 scoops of this, and we scoop it out onto one of these sheets. And this sheet is called a Teflex sheet. It's kind of a Teflon sheet. It's plastic. It's very, very slippery. And underneath that is the screen that comes with the dehydrator tray, and that's just to hold and support if you're dehydrating vegetables or other things. And so I put that on the tray, and then we've got the tray itself. So we've got the tray, a screen, and then we've got the Teflex sheet over it. And when you buy a dehydrator, if you've got a 9-tray dehydrator, buy 9 Teflex sheets because you will use them. So that's 1 scoop. I'll put about maybe 1 scoop and maybe a half a scoop more. And then I'm going to take a spatula, excuse me, and spread it around and spread it out to the edges of the Teflex. And we want to spread it evenly. This is pretty gooey. Spread it out like so. I'm probably going to need a little bit more. And you want to spread it to about maybe 3/16 of an inch thick. When this stuff dries, of course, it becomes thinner. And so in doing that, you want to make sure that it's thick but not too thick. If you get it too thick, like maybe a 1/4 inch thick or so, then it makes it hard to dehydrate, and it will tend to, it could actually ferment before you flip it. So just cover your tray with about, like I say, about 3/16 of an inch worth of this stuff. And I spread it close to the edge, but not right up to it. Okay, and then once you've got a tray like that, then you take the tray and put it in your dehydrator. And here's the dehydrator. Just slide that right in. And then we close the lid. And you set the dehydrator to about 145 and let that run for about 3 hours until the top gets crisp, or not crisp, until it gets stiff, and then we'll take it out and flip it. Okay, the crackers have been dehydrating for about 4 hours, and now we're going to take them out, flip them, and then put them back in the dehydrator for about another 4 hours to finish them up. Okay, let me put the cover back on that dehydrator. And all you got to do is take another dehydrator sheet, put it over the top, and just flip it. And pull that off. Pull off the screen. And then the Teflex, you just peel it back like this. And you've got your cracker there with the moist side up. And then you just take it, put it back in the dehydrator for about another 4 hours, and you're done. Okay, we've got our corn chips done now, and this is what they look like. They've shrunk and the edges have curled up from the sheet. And at this point, you just break them up, whatever size you like. I usually like to make them a little bit small. And you can dip these. These are great with my guacamole mexicali. They really have a great flavor. They're nice and crunchy. So there you go, corn chips. Now that you know my corn chip recipe, I'm going to give you my pimento cheese recipe, my raw vegan pimento cheese recipe. Okay, all you do is take the corn chip recipe, leave out the flaxseed, and you don't dehydrate it. You just blend it up in the food processor and serve it as a dip, and you've got raw pimento cheese, okay? That's it. We're going to make some guacamole, and guacamole is one of those things you can make a lot of different ways. This is what I call Mexicali guacamole. And basically it's avocados mashed up, a little bit of chopped onion, some lime juice, some salt and garlic, and then you can add other things if you want, and I'll show you some of those. We're going to take 6 avocados, and I'm going to pop out the little stems on them, the little nibbies, if they've got them. This one doesn't. I don't think it has one. Because when you're taking the meat out, if you get these little stems out, they won't come out with the meat of the avocado. A lot of times when I'm doing this, I don't get these stems out. And then you scrape the inside with a spoon, it'll come out with the meat. So it's just a little time saver. Okay, so we're going to take the meat of 6 avocados and put it in a bowl. And using my famous cut and roll technique, I've patented that. Okay. And we're going to, need a tablespoon. Take a tablespoon and we're going to run it around the edges and scrape that meat. That is beautiful. That is just perfect. And we'll do all 6 that way. Okay, so we've got our avocados shelled and seeded, and I'm going to mash it now. These are nice and soft. You can also throw this in a food processor and blend it if you like it real creamy. I kind of like my guacamole with a little bit of texture to it, so I like doing it by hand. So that's about how I like it. Put that off to the side. And now I'm going to move that over, and I'm going to take 2 cloves of garlic, and this time I'm going to use a garlic press. This is a garlic press. It's got a little mesh side on one side. The garlic goes in the hole, and then the big press comes down on top of it, and I just squeeze it and crush it into the bowl. That's about 2 cloves of garlic. If you're not a big garlic fan, you can knock it down to 1 clove. But I love garlic. Garlic be very good to me. And then I'm gonna put the juice of half a lemon. Oh, excuse me, half a lime. Duh, that's green. Half a lime. I just stick the old fork in there and give it a twist-a-roni. Squeeze it up. And I always like to, once I get it good and squeezed out, I like to take the fork and scrape the pulp in there. Yeah. Gives it a nice, when you're eating this stuff and you bite into a little bit of pulp, just a little nice spurt of lime. Okay. Then I'm going to take half a medium onion and chop that up fine. Alright, put that in. Yummy, yummy. Normally, you can just leave it at that and put in a little bit of salt. I'm going to put in, let's see, I'll do about a half a teaspoon of salt. You can salt it to taste. And then I'm going to give it a stir. Let's see here. Now that is basic guacamole there. And what I like to do is add a little bit of cilantro and some capers. And if you're a raw food purist, capers are not raw. Normally, you might be able to find some raw. I've never been able to find them raw, but I just put organic capers in there. And you can get these in health food stores and online. And cilantro, you can use cilantro, just a few sprigs. If you don't like cilantro, don't put it in there. So I'm going to chop up a little bit of cilantro, and I'll throw that in with the capers. The capers and the cilantro together are a real nice mix. They kind of balance each other out. You could also use culantro. Culantro is a Latin herb, very similar to cilantro, and it's really nice if you can find it. All right, throw that in. That really does give it gives it a nice flavor with those capers. Lots of things I don't like cilantro in, but I'll tell you, this is one with the capers. Okay, we'll put capers in there. I think that's about 2 ounces of capers, drained. And I'm just going to move this over here and give it a stir. And the cilantro also gives it, and the capers together, it gives it a nice texture, it gives it a nice color, makes it more interesting when you're serving it to friends or a group. Okay, all right, and that, my friends, is guacamole mexicali.